All right. Going to have a fun one today. I had the opportunity to spend 10 days, I think it was, in Africa. And one of the guys who was actually in my inner circle group, we had four groups, was this guy, Jared from, man, Jared, where are you from? Ohio?
I'm in Iowa.
Iowa.
Iowa, yep.
Iowa. I know it's one of
Yep.
those corn states back there. Um,
Big corn state.
big corn state.
Yeah.
And man, Jared, I just had such a great time hanging out with you and hunting with you. And you're just a huge bow hunter and a phenomenal hunter. And I was like, man, I got to get you on the podcast to talk whitetails. But I guess, man, before I even get into that, how you doing, man?
Good. Busy just like you are. It seems like there's never any break anymore. People will look at my career and think it all revolves around the fall hunting season, but I think it might even be busier outside of the fall months anymore. But it's all good. It's all a lot of time outside, which I couldn't ask for anything better there.
And I really want to get into the whitetail stuff and understanding because you actually manage properties and you actually get hired on to come develop properties and hey, this is what you need to cut down, so we need to grow. But man, let's talk about Africa a little bit. I haven't really talked about Africa on here too much. I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't want to go to Africa. I had no desire to ever go to Africa. For me, it was like I don't want to go do a canned hunt. And man, I'll tell you what, I want to go back every year after going to Africa. What was your take on Africa?
I couldn't echo that anymore. I'd never had, I've seen Africa hunts, heard Africa hunts, but never had the desire to do it myself for the same reason that you just mentioned. From a hunting standpoint, everything I do revolving around hunting. I truly enjoy the chase and the challenge, and enjoy making it harder on myself every year. And that's just not what I thought of when I thought of African hunts. But this was kind of a unique opportunity, as you know. It was about more than just the hunt, and so that's kind of what convinced me to make it work schedule wise. And after being there, I can't wait to get back. The whole experience, seeing the culture, seeing the life over there, was enough to make the trip worth it. But beyond that, the hunt itself was um, almost second to none. I compare it after doing it. I compare it to Western hunting out here. Steep physical terrain, trying to spot and stalk animals that are super keen, super. I mean, just next level senses. And I still think, from talking to a lot of people, I still think 95% of the hunts over there in Africa are like what we thought. I think we got really lucky in this situation and just got put in the type of hunt that we enjoy, that we were looking for. So super grateful for that experience, and to have that challenge of the hunt. And it was certainly challenging, obviously, especially with a bow. These animals are just, their senses are awesome. It's in their DNA, I think, to escape predators, and we saw that, and also the amount of game was crazy to me too. Just, it's a target rich environment on one hand, but when you're going after specific species, like we spend a lot of time chasing kudu, you find one to get on, great. The problem is there's 50 to 100 animals between you and him, and good luck, because they're all out there to ruin your hunt, and to blow the other game out. So yeah, just such a cool experience, getting to see that, getting to hang out with guys like yourself. I knew one person going into that hunt. I think there was 12 of us, but to leave there with some really good, new friends, new industry connections, that type of stuff. It was a trip of a lifetime for sure.
Yeah, man. So I guess I would compare because in my mind it was just Africa was just pip lines. Like I've always just heard
Right.
the guys who I know who have done it are mostly like rich dudes who never really even hunt the United States. They come back and they've got 15 animals hanging up in their house, right? Like
Hmm.
as much as you're willing to spend, it's like going to a buffet, right? That's what I've always thought it was. Like you're going over there and you're just going to how much does that one cost? And you shoot it and you shoot it and you shoot it. And man, it was nothing like that except for the fact there was a ton of animals, right? So yes, it was Western
Right.
big game hunting to every. I mean, you're glassing from miles away to find animals sometimes, right? Then you're finding an animal, then you're getting out and you're putting I mean, I stalked a zebra. I suck at archery apparently. I missed twice when I was over there. I drew back twice in 2 animals and missed both of them. But we stalked that zebra for 4 or 5 hours, you know what I mean? Like, you had some
Yeah.
kudu stalks that were easily went from 7 or 8 AM till noon or 1 multiple times. That didn't
Hmm.
happen, right?
Yeah.
It just because 'cause they're like, the kudu is like the size of probably the size of an elk, maybe a little bit bigger, but so much like, but like switched on like a coos deer. And I don't know if it's because they just have like so many more predators over there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, they just have lions, I guess. Maybe lions are just such awesome predators that these animals are just so switched on. But it was like nothing I've ever experienced before, and it was totally opposite of what I thought it was going to be.
Right. Yeah, the kudu, when you mentioned the comparison to elk, I saw so many parallels to elk with regards to how they act. It's a bull with cows, just their senses and all that type of stuff, except for two big things, which in my opinion made it harder. One, you can't call to them, right?
Yep.
Like a bull elk, you can get in and cow call them closer or whatever. And two, they don't vocalize. So like again, elk, you can locate them based on hearing them. Kudu, the only vocalization that they have comparable to an elk is their barking, which is the sound you do not want to hear when
Yeah.
you spook them. So those two things, like to me, made chasing kudu with a bow as hard or harder than elk hunting with a bow.
It could be that, and also we were hunting. I should mention we were hunting with an outfit called Tollies, Tollies South African hunting, and they were just it's a phenomenal outfit. They only come with mature animals too, so I didn't really think that till right now. But we're hunting 7, 8, 9 year old kudu.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
they won't shoot the small ones, and so we have some smaller opportunities and some other animals, but they won't shoot those. So, you get an animal with 8 years of experience under their belt, it's just like trying to kill an 8-year-old bull here, it's a lot harder. They're just smarter, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's like I know, like, like I had a bull this year I got close on with my bow, and he stopped a couple of times for me, but granted it was 80, 90, 120 yards. I wasn't gonna take that shot with my bow. But these kudu, man, it was almost like a mature, like goose deer, mature mule deer, where when you bump them, they just go and they don't turn around and stop. They don't look back. They don't give you, every once in a while you get an
Right.
animal kind of stop and like, hey, what was that? They're like, nope. The first sense of of fear or something, they just leave the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point on mature animals, and it's funny. Like people that don't haven't experienced that. Conversations I've had since being back, everyone's like, "Were you with an outfitter or a guide?" And that was my first ever hunt with an outfitter, so that was my first
Mhm.
experience doing that. But you have to over there. Like I can't imagine trying to on my own figure out the difference between a 6-year-old kudu and an 8-year-old
Oh,
kudu. Like
dude,
there's no chance, or any of the other species for that matter.
I was
Uh,
calling them eland up until the last day. Like it just, there's so many critters, man. That was the cool thing. It was like,
yeah,
oh, like we were going, I think we were after a kudu one day, and you ended up putting a stock on a springbuck and getting a
yeah.
springbuck. Yeah, we were after a kudu
Well,
because yeah,
yeah, after Kudu, then it switched to Impala. We crossed the
oh
ditch,
yeah,
and
that's
Impala
right.
was gone, but the Springbok were there. So it was like changing three different species within half an hour.
And yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, kudu, impala, springbuck, and then we sat there on these springbuck for I couldn't believe like those things are so switched on. They're like kind of like antelope, right? They're big prairie animals,
Yeah,
rolling groups in the open. And man, Jared's just pinned down in the middle of this field behind this bush for gosh, had to be at least an hour, maybe 2 hours.
I'd say an hour. Yeah,
And these things are coming towards me, and I'm like looking at them. I'm like, because I'm hiding behind a bigger bush. I don't want. We tried to keep our distance, And I'm like, man, when are they going to shoot? But I don't realize that Jared's like completely pinned down by some more, and then he ends up shooting this springbuck like right in front of us. We watched him shoot this thing, and it was you can hear his arrow go past us. You know what I mean? Where he shoots the springbuck, and
yeah,
it was just a cool experience, man. It was like even if you blew yes, it was Western Red game hunting, but if you blew a stock, you weren't upset because there's just so many more animals to go after. So you get those reps in, right? And a lot of animals were killed with bows when we were over there. I mean, within our group, I mean, there was guys that killed the red lechwe. There was a freaking a bunch of warthogs were killed. Wildebeest were killed. You killed a wildebeest. I mean, it was a neat experience.
Yeah, it was cool. I think it was just funny to see like just the difference. Like, I think we all started out trying to kill as many animals with our bow as we could, and it was cool. Like, you get back to camp as like, man, what everyone kill, and it was kind of slim for the first few days, and then when most guys switched over to the guns, is like, it
Start
tripled the
stacking.
amount of dead animals that were back at camp when we got back. So we even the playing field a little bit, but yeah, it was just such a cool experience. Nothing, not even close to what I expected from that standpoint. Just the hunting was awesome. It just and I can't wait to get back over there. I want to take buddies over there, take my wife over there. Just I think it's one of those things that even if you're a non-hunter, it's cool to experience something like that.
Yeah, and I think we might have been a little bit spoiled because it's the family we got to be with. It's like a family that's been in this valley for I think it's like 300 years. You're telling us, and their wives are involved, their children are there.
Hmm.
You're literally coming into their home, and they're cooking for you, and there's kids running around, there's dogs running around, and like you're in these beautiful. I don't know what you want to call them, yurts or huts, what you want to call them, like single bedroom studio apartment, basically is what I'd call it, I guess.
Yeah,
And there's a lake, and every morning you wake up and there's impala and springbuck and right out in front of your house eating. You're not allowed to shoot those ones because they're like the pets.
yeah,
And it's just like your wife would go and have the time of her life. Like it would just
right.
be, it's just beautiful. It's so like I was just in Hawaii last week, and most of what we did is just sit around and read books and sit on the beach. And I'm like, man, she could have done the same thing in Africa, and it had probably a cooler experience seeing some really slick
Yeah.
animals.
Yeah, I still never got just driving around, just the animals you see. Like, here in the Midwest, we drive around, we see deer in a field, and out there you drive around, you see a rhino or an elephant in a field.
That was cool.
Just wild animals just out there roaming around, and that was cool. Again, one of those things that a non-hunter would enjoy seeing.
Yeah, they have access to so many properties, right? So they have their own property, then they have access to like a bunch. They've been around for so long and they're so well respected. Like we got to hunt these I don't want to call them rich dudes, whatever, rich dudes property. And it's this giant bull. And like they fly their own private plane in and land and hunt there and leave. We got access to it. And like at one point we're up on this hill and we're glassing and you're looking down, you're like, oh, there's some elephants. Oh, there's some rhinos. Oh, there's some giraffes,
Yeah,
right? Like I mean, it was just unreal, right? And then Jared took off went after a kudu. This is Jared's week. Every day he would just take off after a kudu, and then the kudu would win.
and every
Every
day
day
I'd come back empty-handed.
it
Yeah,
would win. And so me and my kid were sitting at the truck for hours that day, and we were sitting there, and there's all these baboons like all around us. We're watching these baboons like right above us, right? I mean, I was telling the story like when I ended up switching over to a rifle like the third or fourth day because it was kind of like it was hard with my son and me trying to kill. I had a great time, but I switched over to a rifle. And when I ended up killing my kudu, I ended up killing a wildebeest and a kudu at the same time. I was going after a wildebeest. I saw Aoudad. I was going after a wildebeest. There was golden and blue wildebeest. Got over there, laid down for like 3 hours, and then I'm looking at the wildebeest. I'm looking at the aoudad. All of a sudden, some baboons show up, and then all of a sudden, a kudu shows up. So in my scope, there's aoudad, wildebeest, blue wildebeest, and golden wildebeest, and baboons in one, and aoudad. So five species in my rifle scope.
yeah,
And I
it's
ended up shooting the
incredible.
kudu and the wildebeest. Um,
Yeah.
it was just like, where else do you get this experience where you can see this many animals? You know what I mean? Like the more you lay there, the more they just showed up and came out, and
Right. And it's tough to explain to people that weren't there and experienced it, because when you say that, it's like, oh, that sounds like a canned hunt right
oh,
there.
it does, doesn't
That
it?
many, but it was far from that. It just was. It's such big country, and again, I didn't even expect the mountainous terrain that we were in.
Oh,
Just that alone was not what I expected from Africa either.
I can tell you they were not stoked where I shot my animals, and I did not get my hides back
Oh
because they
yeah,
couldn't get them out in one piece. And on those ones, so I only just did skulls on those animals because it was
yeah,
so steep that it was, if I were to make it slip, you'd roll down this hill. Where I shot him,
mhm,
it was like I think it was like a 419-yard shot uphill.
yeah.
Um,
It was like
and
at the end of the day, or by the time
yeah,
we got on them, it was at the end of the day. And yeah, to your point, like our guy Peter, he brought in trackers, but he's like, we got to bring them off. Like it's gonna be too dangerous having them up there after
yep.
dark. on that steep of a mountainside.
Yeah, it was wild, man. It was cool. It was an experience and a half, and I highly recommend Tolly's. This could be a Tolly's commercial. I don't care. These guys were just awesome, next level. And this not only that, just solid Christian family that's giving 10% of their proceeds goes back to their community to helping children in their community to basically, you watch the news and it's like, oh, South Africa's corrupt and it's all this, it's all over the news right now. And these guys are actually plucking kids out of their community and creating solid leaders out of them through their discipleship program. Where they put them through a year long intense discipleship program for, I think, 10 kids. And when they get out, they have like 10 job offers. Like everyone in the community wants to hire them because these kids have such a work ethic and are so, morally sound.
Hmm. Yeah, they're doing some really cool things. I just want to say I don't recommend Tollies because I want to be able to book a future hunt with them. No, I'm just kidding. They're such an awesome group, and yeah, I can't imagine going with anyone else on another trip over there.
Yeah, right now I'm kind of like I'm just going to go back with these guys every time, right? Like I
Yeah,
don't I don't think I've
exactly.
I've just heard, even hearing some of the stories of other outfitters from guys there that just seem kind of like nightmares. These guys just seem so, yeah, just on it, and I keep joking like I really want to go shoot. Like they have this thing called like the little 10, and it's like these little dikers that are like, I mean, I don't know how to
Yeah,
describe 15-pound deer. And I'm like, that would
heck,
be a really fun challenge to go over there and try and get they don't have all of them there, but they've got like five of them. Like that
yeah,
would be that seems kind of fun to me, because honestly, I'm like, what am I going to do with all these giant animals? What am I
yeah,
going to do? Like, I got enough. My wife's already over all the deer and everything in the house, and
yeah. That tiny tin, you could do little miniature shoulder mounts and fit it all
Uh,
inside
I
of.
would love to do a tiny 10 shoulder mounts in like a little 5x5 area on my wall.
Yeah, you could do all 10 of them in that little space, about the same size space as one other shoulder mount.
Yeah. Oh, dude, like some of those, like the elands
Yeah,
are, I think they're
crazy.
like 1,500 pounds, something crazy. I mean, these
Yeah.
giant animals, dude, and just these bodies. And yeah, some of those animals are giant. I didn't shoulder out any of mine. Did you shoulder out any of your stuff?
Mm-mm.
Just your,
No,
yeah. So just the hides.
skull mounts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. But yeah, dude. So Africa was cool, but you had to come home. We had to come back to reality, just to the lonely whitetail. There's
Yeah, it's funny coming back to that, but yeah, my bread and butter is whitetail. Obviously, being in Iowa, growing up, um, hunting these things, but I think we all kind of evolve in our journeys and hunting journeys. And to me anymore, I still love killing big mature whitetails. Don't get me wrong, but the entire process is kind of where I found myself. The off season, the chase. When I killed a target buck that I'm going after, there's almost this like feeling of like being bummed out that it's over, that chase, and the journey of following deer over the years, or trying to get on and for years. That's the part that I love the most anymore. And so I've really gotten more deeply involved in the land management side, taking properties that are somewhat raw or just average, mediocre hunting, and doing the things that I enjoy to try to make them into premium whitetail farms. Bettering the habitat, bettering the food, that type of stuff. So that's what I'm busy doing this time of year when I'm not actually hunting. I'm spending a lot of time on properties figuring out how to make them better, and not just for myself, but for other guys too, other landowners that may or may not have the experience or the time to put in to their properties. So yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that, and that's what I've been catching up on since getting back from Africa.
Yeah, it is. I don't know why like us Western guys like kind of look down on whitetail, right? And then you think about it, and your guys' experience is so much more intimate with these deer, right? Like you said, like I don't know the deer. My kid shot a giant last year, and like I didn't know that deer when he was 3 or 4 or
Right.
5. And dude, you
Right.
guys know these deer for a lifetime sometimes, right? I mean, you're watching them come up. You're I don't want to say you're not raising them, but you're creating a habitat for them to live in, um, giving an opportunity to breed, and allowing them. Like I feel like you guys are so much more picky than us too, right? Like a lot of times we're just shooting animals out here. You guys are, nope, give them one more year, give them one more year,
Yeah.
and putting way more effort into it than we are, way more
Yeah.
to get these good deer.
Yeah, and I think that I don't think one is better than the other. I just think that they're just different situations. You know, we have that ability here, and you got to think too. You know, some people may hear that and think, "Man, you're hunting, you know, raised deer, farm raised deer," and it's
No,
you know obviously
not
that's
even.
not the case. But you also have to remember too the size of land here. I mean, I hunt a lot of like 40 acre, 80 acre, 100 acre pieces.
Mhm.
Well, the deer travels a lot more than that. So just because we know a deer doesn't mean he's always around. You know, most of the time, I don't see the bucks very much this time of year on my properties. You know, typically they show up closer to fall, but even then, you know, they could roam for miles if they want to as they're chasing does and stuff. So it's not quite that, but yeah, just I would say you're right. You're spot on when when you say like we you know the animals we're hunting. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes you'll kill a random deer that's just out cruising, you know. But yeah, it's just part of the overall experience. There's not again not one better than the other, just different experiences. And I enjoy going out west and hunting, you know, the other way, the way that's more common, just as much as anybody else.
So are you naming these deer?
Sometimes I will. Sometimes lately I haven't. But it's the only thing with regards to naming them. You know, obviously I've filmed my hunts and share the stories of my hunts and have for forever, 15, 16, 17 years, something like that. And it does make it easier for someone to follow along if there's some type of like, you know, you characterize a buck somehow, whether that's through a name, and you can only talk about so many Big Tens or you know the sticker buck or you know these common names that you hear thrown out there. Well, the problem is there's lots of those, and so if you come up with some type of unique identifier, it does make it easier for a viewer to follow the story, which again is my favorite part. You know, well told story is the one thing that I don't think will ever get old. And so that's what I try to do is tell the whole story, you know, of course from an entertainment perspective, but also educational. I think guys can watch a well told story and pick pieces of it to go and apply to their own situation.
So throw some whitetail names out there. What are some whitetail names you got that you've ran through the years?
Like I said, I haven't named any in a long time, but one of the more famous ones, this was probably trying to think 2014, so like 11 years ago, I had a deer that I called George Brett. I was a big baseball guy, and if you're a baseball guy, you know the name George Brett. But one of the more famous incidents with George Brett, the real baseball player George Brett, was you know a pine tar incident where he was got caught or got accused of using too much pine tar on his bat. And
Mhm.
this buck, when he first showed up, it looked like he had pine tar up and down his antlers, just from rubbing you know pine trees or whatever. So that's where that name came from, and he kind of became a somewhat of a legend of a buck just from the different encounters and cool footage that I filmed him fighting in a creek one year with another buck, just an epic whitetail fight. And so he became pretty well known. But again, like I think part of it was because he had a name, you know, it made it easier for viewers to follow along. Um, it's actually that deer right there and right there.
That is a gigantic deer.
Yeah. So yeah,
Jeez.
that's probably one of the more like well known names that I can think of over the years. Like I said, I don't remember the last time I actually named named one per se. Um, that really stuck. Sometimes if I'm just talking to buddies or whatever, I'll throw out a name like, the double G2 buck, just to have some type of reference on the deer on which specific buck you're talking about.
So I never really thought about this till now because like I'm probably gonna have a whitetail lease this year. I haven't told you that yet. I hired a
Oh
whitetail
yeah,
guy. He's running my company now, right? So I'm gonna get
yeah.
a Pennsylvania whitetail lease.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But you know, you guys like you George Brett, like you build this property for George Brett, right? And you got the corn, you've got the you're clearing things, and I don't know, I'm just totally butchering what you do, making it sound so much easier than what you do because it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
And now George Brett can get shot on the neighbor's property.
Oh yeah. Oh, that happens every year. I mean, that's the reality of it. Again, it goes back to, we're hunting smaller, relatively smaller parcels compared to the
Hmm.
vast land out west, and these deer don't know where the property lines are, so they're just going to go. They're wild animals. They'll get killed by neighbors every year. It's just part of it. You just know it's part of the game, and it's a chance. And you're not necessarily trying to build habitat for one specific deer. You're trying to build for the whole herd. Give them less of a reason to leave. Make it so they are healthier to get through some of our tough winters. To where, when that, towards the end of the winter, instead of trying to put all their resources towards their health, they can, you know live and thrive a lot better just because they have everything they need, and just, natural browse and water and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's just it's hard to explain until you're in it. Like, it sounds like we're doing 100% for the deer, but honestly, I've come to love the work of it, the process of it. So I'm kind of doing it for myself because I enjoy that. I love seeing, new habitat take shape, rather than, we have a lot of, we're in big ag country, so a lot of row crop ground around, but taking a historically row crop field and turning it into native grasses and habitat. I love seeing that type of stuff. It's not just the deer that benefit. There's a lot of wildlife that benefit from that. So I've fallen in love with the process for sure. Does it benefit the deer? Yes. Does it benefit the hunting? Yes. But it benefits my well-being, I guess you could say, just because I love the work of it.
So walk me through that because in my mind, like what does it look like for you to get a property and change it? Because in my mind, you're saying you're taking a row crop and turning it into grass. Like in my mind, like I would just want to have like cornfields everywhere and that the deer can eat the cornfield. So you're not just having cornfields. Like why do you want to change a cornfield into a like talk you're getting a property? What does that look like? I want to, I don't know, Wes, understand what the process is and how much work you really put into it. Because it's shocking to me how much work you guys put into these deer.
Yeah, and every property is a little bit different. Like, you talk about the row crop. Row crop's obviously income. That's a good thing. But we also have CRP programs, which is a crop reserve program. So basically, you take it out of crop production, and the government will pay you so much per acre per year to have it established in a native grass program. So you still get, so like, let's say for a non-farmer, a farmer can obviously make more because they're the one doing the work. But let's say a non-farming landowner has ground and there's some tillable acres, right? Um, you can cash rent that to a local farmer to farm that ground, and that farmer will cut you a check every year for letting them farm your tillable acres. Or you can enroll it in a CRP program where you go in, you seed like a native grass, depending on the specific program and the recommendations. You seed a blend of native grasses and wildflowers, or again, whatever it is, a CRP blend. And it's usually a 10 or 15-year contract where the government pays you X amount of acres, depending on the soil, let's say $200 an acre on average, per year, to have that ground in CRP. So you still get income from those acres, but now they're more or less habitat or potentially food rather than just straight row crop. Um, in comparison, I think you were kind of alluding to like the food plot game.
Yeah.
where you want to have food on your property too. But the food, you got to have a balance between food and habitat. You can't just have one or the other. Otherwise the deer are going to have to go seek that out somewhere. If you don't have the habitat, they may come to your spot for food, your property for food, but they gotta go live somewhere else, or vice versa. If you don't have the food, they're going to travel and find it. So you want to find a balance there. But when I say like these tillable cornfields and bean fields, these are like, huge, hundreds of acres sometimes fields that get harvested or combined every fall. So ideally, you plant food that does not get harvested. You're planting in smaller plots, maybe 2 or 3 acres of corn or beans or brassicas or clover, or whatever it is, that's available to the deer throughout the fall and winter.
Oh, so you're just planting a cornfield or a bean field and never harvesting it.
hmm Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's in like 2 or 3 acre fields. The goal is to provide enough food for the deer, where really all year round. But when we're talking about like the corn and bean plots, you're wanting to provide enough food for the deer to get them through the winter to spring green up.
Hmm.
Once spring green up occurs, you get that springtime, summertime. There's this time of year. There's forage everywhere. They don't need a food plot to go feed. They can feed literally everywhere. Everything's green. Everything's lush. But on the opposite side of that, in January or February, food's pretty scarce. So you want to make sure those deer have some food to help them again stay healthier through the winter and get them to spring green up. That's the goal. So when I look at a property, I'm trying to decide how many acres and food. I'm gonna base that on, what's the deer density like? Is it high population, low population? How much food am I going to need to get them through, to spring green up the following season, following year?
So, like, let's say you let, because this is where like all the work comes in. So now, let's say you let this field grow up and die off, right? It has the corn. Do you have to now go back in this year, till all that up, replant that field again, or does it just keep planting itself?
No, you have to redo it. So it depends on what you're planting. Corn and beans are obviously an annual, so you got to plant that every year. Things like clover and chicory, those are perennials. So those do come back every year. But I try to offer like a diverse mix of your grains, like your corn or beans, or sorghum, along with your greens. So your clover, your chicory, your brassicas, that type of stuff. Because different times of the year, deer have different preferences, and I've even seen, it's kind of crazy, but a deer is not a deer when it comes to it's probably, some deer just seem to have, like, people just prefer different things. So the more diverse you can make your property, the better it's going to be at holding deer during longer periods of the year.
Jeez, a lot of work. So, do you guys run feeders up there too, or no?
Not really. Every state is different in terms of the legality of it. Iowa, you cannot bait. You can feed outside of the season, if you want to supplement deer. But maybe late winter after the season closes, I'll put out some feed or some alfalfa, uh, like hay bales, to help again get them through the tougher time of the year. But Iowa's not a bait state, so you can't have feeders out or anything like that.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so you'll just throw out the hay like when it starts snowing, so they have hay, something to feed on, something
hmm
to deal with. Man,
Yep.
it's a lot of work. No, go ahead.
Yeah, just to keep them around and try to keep them healthy and just provide a little bit of supplemental food to get them through the tougher winter.
Now, what about water? Like, are you just doing natural streams, or do you guys actually put in like drinkers and stuff for these deer?
A lot of guys will put in little water holes and stuff like that to supplement. Again, that's kind of one of those things, in my opinion, it depends on the property. Does your property already have ponds on it? Does it have a creek running through it? But water can be just as powerful as food. I think deer are pretty good at finding water where they need to. But you can, from a strategic standpoint, you can put in your own little water hole, somewhere that's, more convenient for them and more convenient for you too.
Now, do you? Man, it just seems like so much work for this thing. So now you're doing that. Now, Now,
See,
are you
that's the perfect example right there, though. Like, it's a ton of work. People have no clue. There are days within the last week that I come home absolutely exhausted. Like, just my whole body feels like spaghetti. Like, just to the max, exhausted, heat, all that type of stuff. And it's like you step back and it's like, man, all this for a deer. Like, you don't have to do this to kill a deer, and that's 100% correct. But again, I've fallen in love with the process to put in that sweat equity and put in that time and watch the wildlife respond to it, watch stuff grow, watch things benefit from it. That is why I do it. It's not because I want to maximize my opportunity to kill a buck. Like, the work to reward ratio isn't there for that. You have to love the work and the process of it first of all.
yeah, you probably make a lot more money getting a day job and then just go killing a whitetail if you want to kill a giant every year in Texas, but it's not what you're doing it for.
Yeah, yeah,
You can shoot
exactly.
it. You can go shoot a 300 deer tomorrow for 15 grand.
Yeah,
It's just you got
yeah,
it's funner to grow it and do that thing,
yeah.
man. So now, are you are you a tree stand guy? Because you're archery pretty much only, right? I mean, are
Hmm.
you a tree stand, tree saddle guy? How are you hunting now?
Mostly tree stand, yeah. It's what I've loved doing for a long time. The tree stand. I do love being mobile. You talk about the saddle game. I don't quite have the experience with saddles. I've done it a handful of times, but I've been pretty comfortable just with hanging hunts in the tree stand. I like using a really lightweight setup, and I would say north of 80% of my hunts are hanging hunts. So where I'm actually going in, hanging the stand that day, hunting it, taking it down at the end of the
Oh,
hunt.
really? You're not going in. See, in my mind, like you're building this property out, and you just got you just cut out like a pie shape where the deer come in, and you just set your tree stand, and that's where you're going to hunt them from.
Yeah, no, it's not like that at all. I mean, these deer are still tough to hunt, and you can do certain things to manipulate the movement somewhat, but they're still wild animals. They're still again going to cross property lines. They're still going to use the wind and thermals to their advantage, all that type of stuff. So especially again when you're hunting mature animals, you're hunting 5, 6+ year old whitetails. So um, you can do a lot and still get beat by them. But part of the reason I like doing the hanging hunts is I think you learn a lot more just about deer behavior and how they use properties, but also you always have that element of surprise. So, like, let's say you have a preset stand or blind or whatever it is, and you create a negative experience or two for the deer. You blow them out, you spook them from that location. Well, a mature animal, it doesn't take too much of that for them to start to be weary of that spot. Um, they may not completely relocate, but they're going to change on how they do it. If you're doing hanging hunts, you're bouncing around, even if it's only a move of 30 yards, 50 yards, you always have that element of surprise on your side. Um, and that's the biggest reason I've seen a lot of success with that. Those first time hunting a tree, oftentimes is the best.
Really? So here's another thing. So I just went and hunted bears with Cody Rich and Brad Hunt last week, and my buddy Travis. And within like the first mile, I could smell Cody. He smelled really bad. We're sweating. I mean, we by the time we got done with this hunt, we stunk.
Yeah.
Now, whitetail guys, are you changing at the tree? Let's talk about that process because this is like I don't understand it. Like you guys are next. Are you like washing your clothes in sage? Like let's talk about that stuff. Ozonators.
Um, Sometimes you'll use ozone on my clothes, not a ton. I try to be as scent free as possible with washing clothes regularly. I always try to change when I get to a property outside of the truck. Um, it's so you can't beat a whitetail's nose though. That's the hard part. So you always have to play the wind when you're hunting. But again, I do try to do everything I can because I'm a believer that if you can even you can't beat them, but if you can lower the concentration of scent, I think you can get away with a little bit more. Even if that deer gives you an extra 10 seconds before he blows out of there, that could have been the 10 seconds you needed to get an arrow off. Or if you can confuse them, making them think that you were there 4 hours ago because it's a little concentration of scent because you're mostly scent free, that's enough to fool them into not knowing you're there at that exact second. So I do try to do everything I can from a scent perspective with regards to washing clothes and spraying down and all that. But I'm also smart enough to know you can't completely beat their nose. You have to play the wind, and especially the thermals. That's another thing that I think it's overlooked in quote unquote flatlander
Yeah, I've
countries,
never
even
heard someone say
Midwest.
thermals. I wanted to hear about that because you said thermals, and I'm like, what do you mean thermals? You guys are hunting cornfields.
I know. Yeah, it's the same type of thing that you guys have out west, where they're gonna, thermals are gonna fall in the evenings and rise in the mornings. The difference is yours are going up mountainsides, a lot more severe. But think about if I'm just on a slight hill and behind me there's a ditch. Your
Mhm.
thermals are still there. They may not be rushing downhill like a wind, like it does in the mountains, but they're still there. And the whitetails certainly use that. They find these spots where they have the thermals at their advantage, and sometimes it's for danger, but a lot of times it's for just being able to smell what's going on in their herd. Being able to scent check the other deer and the does and stuff like that. So I try to play thermals as much as I can, um, finding setups where my thermals are going to drop down into a spot where the deer can't get below me, in a creek, or in the mornings, I'll go in deeper knowing my thermals are going to rise up. It's going to be harder for the deer to detect me because the scent's rising up above them. So yeah, it's a thing that doesn't get talked about a ton and gets overlooked as far as Midwest hunting goes, but it's certainly a huge factor.
Yeah, it's gnarly, dude. Like hanging out with you for a week and just hearing how much time you put into it, I was like, man, this is crazy. And I have a bunch. I mean, obviously, like, my new guy Sean is running the company for me now. He's a huge whitetail guy, right? I'm going to go shoot my first whitetail this year. I'm going to go back with Timber Ninja and Shed Crazy. We're going to go hunt North Carolina. We're going to go
Oh,
hunt like
nice.
lever actions in December. So we're going to go
Sweet.
back there. And I never killed a whitetail before, so we're going to go. We're doing public land back there. We're going to do like a traditional deer camp. Set something up and
Yeah,
fly back and do that and go chase them. But I mean, there's obviously an addiction there, right? It's obviously so much bigger, right? Like that's kind of where I'm going with my new shooting tripods. Everything is like whitetails are so much bigger than Western big game hunting. Like it's just like on a whole, like from Colorado
yeah,
east, there's so many more hunters that are chasing these deer every year than are getting to chase our deer out here, right? Like ours are so much more scarce, so much harder to get a tag for. And
yeah.
whitetails are just like I don't want to say they're like cockroaches, but dude, like you can't kill them. Like I was hunting bears at 8,000 feet in Montana, and there were whitetails up
Really?
there. I mean, like they just like they're everywhere. Whitetails are just everywhere, man. They
Yeah.
just it seems like I don't want to say mule deer aren't a weak animal, but just like compared to a whitetail, like whitetails just survive and they're all over the country.
They are, and part of that, the number of hunters is just what we have access to, right? I don't have access to elk here in Iowa, otherwise I'd probably be a lot bigger elk hunter. But yeah, it's just a different game. It's a different style of hunting, and um, I love both of it, or both of them. I love any time I get a chance to draw a Western tag. I cherish it and love it, and looking forward to Montana this fall. But the whitetail is kind of my year round passion.
Yeah, and that's one thing I didn't really realize until then is like you guys are doing it all year. How many does like when you look at a property, are you going in there and shooting does every year as well or no?
Yeah, it depends on the property, but yeah, shooting does is a really important piece to the management game. You want to take a certain amount of does off the property. Again, it depends on the density and all that type of stuff. But one of the challenges we have here is quotas on doe tags or antlerless tags. I have some properties that I hunt or manage that need a lot of does taken off. Again, it's kind of that we've gone to the extent of building some of the best habitat around, and so for that standpoint, we hold a lot of deer. But when they create these quotas, they look at the deer populations on a county-wide basis. And so that county a lot of times doesn't have allocated doe tags by the time the season starts. So I could tell myself, hey, I need to kill 10 does off this property this year, but there's no tags available. And so from that standpoint, I get, um, I run into just the challenge of trying to kill enough does simply because I can't get tags for them in certain counties.
Really? How many properties are you managing?
It's a good question. There's a handful. I would say probably 6 or 7 that I hunt and manage, and then there's another probably that many that I don't hunt that I'm just doing the work for the other landowners.
So they're just calling you up and saying, Jared, I want to pay you to manage my property.
Yeah, or sometimes it's just friends and just you're just helping them out. Like they want to know, hey, can you? What should I plant here? How should I set this spot up? Like where should I put a stand? That type of stuff too.
Gnarly, dude. So we always like to have a hunting story on here. You want to tell us a story of George Brett, or you want to tell us a different story? You want to give us a whitetail story?
Man. Yeah, I'll give one. I'll try to mix it up a little bit since we kind of talked about the Georgia Pratt one. I'll tell the story of this buck in the middle here, right? That one on the pedestal. There was a deer I chased for 2 years. Ended up killing him when he was a 6 year old. And he was the other kind of cool thing you get to know about deer is just like their tendencies and personalities. He was pretty like kind of a loner deer. He lived out. We talked about the CRP earlier. Big CRP, wide open, native, tall native grasses, and he lived out in that stuff. So from the standpoint of bow hunting, it was really, really challenging. You couldn't get close enough because there weren't trees or anything like that. It's hard to hunt from the ground, with a cameraman. It's not like spot and stock territory. So I had multiple encounters with him over a couple of years, and the season was coming to a close this second year, and I hadn't seen him for an entire over what was it 2 months, I think it was. I had an encounter November 1st that year and never saw him again until January 1st. Saw him on January 1st. He came out following a bunch of does, kind of going around this food source. I don't know where they ended up going, but my idea that night was to get up in a blind and elevated position with my cameraman, and if we spotted him, I was going to climb down, throw on a ghillie suit, and see if I could go get him while my cameraman filmed from an elevated blind position. And I did that, and I got out there, ended up couldn't really get around. He ended up moving, following the herd, out of bow range, and I watched him walk right by my cameraman that night. Walked within 20 yards of my cameraman. So if I would just stayed put, and at that point, there's like less than a week, or around a week left in the season. And I'm thinking, that it's just not meant to be. This deer has my number. He just literally walked past the position I was in less than an hour ago. But that night, I watched him walk by a brush pile. I was kind of looking back at the footage, noticed he walked by a brush pile. When we got a good wind 2 days later, I went in, my cameraman and I both put on ghillie suits. We climbed up on this brush pile and sat up on the brush pile. And unfortunately, he did it again. He came out, um, and has worked his way 25 yards past. And just the experience of hunting a giant whitetail from the ground like that, being in his turf, um, and doing it like that, where you just felt like you were part of nature. Like, we were in this brush pile with pheasants flying up out of our laps, birds landing. It was like you completely blended in with the situation, and he had no clue we were there. Um, the only time he even like kind of um, got a little bit nervous was he was walking right at us, and again a pheasant flew up out of our brush pile that we were in, and that they're so aware that time of year, the gun seasons that just got past, they're being chased around, And so like he looked for a few seconds, relaxed, and then came the rest of the way in. And if you've hunted from the ground and sat for a long time, you know how it's tough. Like you stiffen up and you don't quite you're quite not quite as prepared. And so I remember knowing that I had one shooting lane, and when I did a practice draw, just because of the way I was sitting in this brush pile, I didn't really have all my core strength and everything. And so I did a practice draw early on the hunt and like struggled to get my bow back just because of the position I was in. And so I knew in my head, I'm watching this 180-inch deer walk at me. I'm like, when he gets to this spot, he's going to see me draw back. There's no doubt. I'm on the ground 25 yards, and I'm just gonna, and I can't hesitate. Otherwise, I won't get drawn, just based, again, like I'm leaning back like this. And so I just rip it back, and he pins me. Looks right at me for the shot, and I shoot him, and he runs 100 yards and falls over. But that experience of chasing a deer for 2+ years, and to kill him like that on the ground with a ghillie suit on, sitting in hiding in a brush pile, it was epic. It was such a cool, as snow, ice, layers of ice on the ground. Like you'd hear the deer crunching through the ice on it with every step. Just such a cool experience. The footage turned out awesome. It was one of those
Steam
that'll
coming off his
always
breath,
remember.
the whole
Yeah,
nine.
just cold. Just all the CRP and stuff had looked like icicles out there. Everything was just ice coated, and just one of those you won't ever be able to replicate, but also one that you'll never forget.
That's awesome, dude. And you do film all your hunts. We didn't even touch on that. You're a big filmer, big
Yeah.
YouTube following. Jared, where can we find you on Instagram and YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube is the primary platform. It's just my name, Jared Mills. On YouTube is the channel. That's again, I like telling the full stories, and that's a better platform for the long form video and telling the stories. I do have Instagram. Again, just it's Jared J Mills on Instagram. I post some of the short form stuff there. So either one of those, yeah, guys are welcome to reach out anytime.
Yeah, get on there, check him out. Bug him for some whitetail questions. He's a whitetail dork. He loves these things.
That's right.
And I mean, he's top of the game when it comes to raising up. I wouldn't say raising whitetails, but creating the habitat for them. And he understands these animals probably just as good as anybody out there right now. And he's highly respected for that in the industry and just a wealth of knowledge. I know that if I do get a whitetail lease, I might be having Jerry come out and hunt with me out there and tell me how my property is because apparently this one's supposed to be pretty good, Jared. I don't know, but
That's
I'll let you
awesome.
know.
Yeah, I'd be happy to come
Pennsylvania,
out. Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
I'm actually going to be heading to PA within a week or two. So,
Are
yeah,
you?
let me know. Always fun to see new ground for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. Let's do it again.
Yeah, thanks, man.